It was a late night in my penthouse overlooking the city. Lights from skyscrapers glittered like stars fallen on Earth, yet inside me there was only silence. Money has a strange way of amplifying loneliness. People think it buys happiness. But in truth, it only buys distance. I, Adam Khan, 35 years old, CEO of a multinational company, owner of everything men chase their entire lives, cars, jets, properties, even respect. And yet, at night when the city fell asleep, I remained awake, staring at my phone, wishing there was someone to message me out of love and not out of need. That night, a vibration on my phone broke the silence. It was a message from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was another business inquiry or maybe a marketing spam. But when I clicked it open, my heart froze. The message read, "Sir, I'm sorry for disturbing you. My name is Mishal. I don't know if this message will even reach the right person, but my baby has no milk left. I thought I was texting a charity number I saw on a wall. Please, if you can help, I'll pay you back someday. Please don't ignore me." I blinked at the screen, rereading it twice. My initial instinct was that it was some scam. People often find ways to tug at a rich man's sympathy. But something about her words, "I'll pay you back someday," struck me differently. It didn't sound like begging. It sounded like dignity. I almost put my phone aside, but then another message came. "He's been crying for 2 hours. I tried sugar water, but it isn't working. Please, just tell me if you can't help so I'll stop hoping." For a man who signs billion-dollar deals, my fingers trembled as I typed back, "Who gave you my number?" Within seconds, her reply came. "I'm sorry, sir. It was painted on a wall near the clinic. I thought it was an organization's number. Please forgive me. I won't disturb you again." I leaned back in my chair, my chest tightening. She didn't even ask again. She apologized and withdrew. That's when I realized this wasn't a scam. This was desperation. Without another thought, I messaged, "Where are you?" There was silence for a minute. Then her hesitant reply appeared. "It doesn't matter. I know I disturbed you. I'm sorry. Please forget it." I could almost picture her holding the phone, her baby crying in her arms, her pride refusing to accept help even when she was drowning. That pride. I knew it well. It was the same pride I carried when I built my empire from scratch. I insisted, "Tell me your location." This time, she didn't respond. Something inside me stirred. Something I hadn't felt in years, a burning need to do something for someone not because of business, but because it mattered. I tried calling the number. After a few rings, she answered, her voice trembling. "Hello? Listen," I said firmly. "I don't know who you are, but I can't ignore what you wrote." "Where are you?" There was silence, only the faint sound of a baby crying in the background. Finally, she whispered, "If you really mean it." "An old apartment building, Block C, room 204, near Shalimar Road." Then she quickly added, "But please don't think I'm taking advantage. I swear I'll return it." Her words cut into me. I replied softly, "Just take care of your baby. I'm on my way." The drive to that side of town was like crossing into another world. From glittering roads to broken streets, from polished glass towers to crumbling plaster walls. My car, a sleek black Bentley, looked like it didn't belong here. Neither did I, but as I parked near the dimly lit building, I realized maybe I did. I carried bags filled with baby formula, diapers, and essentials I quickly picked up on the way. When I knocked on the chipped wooden door of room 204, it opened slowly, and there she was. Mishal, a young woman with tired eyes, her long hair falling messily over her shoulders, holding a tiny baby wrapped in a worn cloth. She looked at me as if I was a stranger from another planet. Her gaze flicked to the bags in my arms, then back to my face, her lips parting in shock. I'll pay you back," she whispered before I could even speak. Her voice was hoarse, maybe from crying. I looked around the room. Bare walls, peeling paint, a single dim bulb, and no furniture except a broken chair and an old mattress on the floor. It wasn't just poverty, it was survival. "You don't have to pay me back," I said gently, handing her the supplies. "Your baby needs this." Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. "I don't accept charity." I couldn't help but smile softly. "Then consider it a loan. Pay me back whenever life allows you to." For a long moment, she stood frozen, then finally took the bags, clutching them like they were life itself. The baby stirred in her arms, and she quickly opened one pack of formula with trembling hands. As she fed her baby, I watched something more powerful than wealth unfold before me, the pure love of a mother. The baby stopped crying, sucking gently, and Mishal closed her eyes in relief, whispering a prayer under her breath. In that tiny room, with cracked walls and silence, I felt richer than I ever had in my penthouse. I didn't know then, but that mistaken message had just changed the course of my life. I should have left after handing over the supplies. That's what any sensible man would do. Step in, offer help, and walk away. But something kept my feet rooted to the ground as I stood in Mishal's tiny apartment. The baby, now fed, rested quietly in her arms. The silence in that room was heavy, not peaceful, but the kind that hides stories untold. My eyes traced the walls with peeling paint, the floor with cracks, the single curtain fluttering weakly against the cold night air seeping in from the window. This wasn't a home. It was merely a shelter. "You should sit," Mishal said suddenly, almost reluctantly. Her voice carried both gratitude and caution. She motioned toward the only chair in the room, a rickety wooden piece that looked like it might collapse under me. I sat anyway, careful not to break it. "Thank you," I said softly. She glanced at me, surprised. Perhaps she expected me to command, not thank. After all, in her world, men like me were not visitors. We lived in glass towers, drove cars that cost more than entire buildings here, and had no reason to step into lives like hers. Her baby, tiny, innocent, fragile, nestled closer to her chest. I found myself asking, "What's his name?" Her lips curved, the faintest smile touching her face. "Aram," she said. "It means mercy. Beautiful," I murmured. "And fitting, he looks peaceful now." She lowered her gaze, whispering, "He hasn't slept properly in days. I was so scared tonight. I thought—" She stopped, her throat tightening. I didn't push her. Silence often says more than words. Finally, she looked up, her eyes glassy yet firm. "I shouldn't have messaged. I thought I was writing to a charity, not to—" She trailed off, scanning me as if trying to figure me out. "You don't belong here." Her words hit me unexpectedly. For years, I had felt the same in my own world, that I didn't belong. The money, the titles, the power, they were all cages made of gold. And now, in this tiny room, I felt more human than I had in a long time. "I belong," I said quietly, "because you asked for help, and because your message reached me, not anyone else. Maybe it was meant to." She shook her head. "No, it was a mistake." I smiled faintly. "Sometimes mistakes are just destiny in disguise." Her eyes flickered with confusion, maybe even fear, so I quickly changed the subject. "Where is your family?" Her body stiffened. She didn't answer at once, but I could see the storm behind her silence. Finally, she said, "Gone. My parents died years ago. I have no one. Just me and him." She looked at Aram, her face softening, then hardened again. And even his father left. I felt a surge of anger toward a man I didn't even know. How could someone abandon her? Abandon them? "I'm sorry," I said, though the words felt small. "You don't have to be," she replied firmly. "People do what they want. I can't force anyone to stay. That's why—" She swallowed. "That's why I never ask anyone for help. I'll pay you back. Somehow." There it was again. Her pride. Her unshakable determination to stand tall even while drowning. "You don't owe me anything," I said gently. She looked at me sharply. "I do, because the world doesn't give without taking. And I won't let my son grow up thinking his mother begged." Her fire startled me. It wasn't arrogance, it was dignity. And in that moment, I admired her more than any boardroom full of executives I had ever commanded. I spent the next hour listening to her. She spoke sparingly, each word weighed before it left her lips. I learned she worked part-time at a sewing shop, barely making enough to pay rent. Her landlord threatened eviction constantly. The clinic nearby refused treatment without payment. She had been surviving on scraps, her only fuel the love she carried for her son. And all this from a wrong message. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door, her baby still cradled in her arms. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer this time. For not ignoring me, I nodded. Take care of yourself. And of Arham. She hesitated, then whispered, I will, and remember, I'll pay you back. I left the building with her words echoing in my mind. I didn't know why they mattered so much, but they did. Back in my penthouse, the silence felt different now. It wasn't just loneliness, it was emptiness. I poured myself a glass of water, but even the view of the glittering skyline failed to impress me. My mind kept drifting back to that cracked wall, that dim bulb, that mother holding her child with more strength than all the wealth I had ever amassed. For the first time in years, I didn't check my emails, didn't scroll through reports, didn't plan my next expansion. Instead, I thought of Mishal. Her message had started as a mistake. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't. The next day, I found myself driving back to that same broken street. I told myself it was just to check if she was okay, nothing more. But deep down, I knew it was more. When I knocked on her door again, she looked surprised, almost alarmed. Why are you here? She asked quickly, her brows furrowed. I was in the area, I lied, though both of us knew it wasn't true. She sighed. You shouldn't keep coming here. People will talk. I don't care what people talk, I said firmly. But she cared. I could see it in her worried eyes. I do. I've had enough of people talking. Enough of being judged. I wanted to tell her she had nothing to fear, that I wasn't here to judge but to help, to simply be. But words felt weak in the face of her reality, so instead I offered something else. Let me at least help with Aram's medical checkup. Babies need it. She froze, torn between refusing and wanting it for her son. Finally, she whispered, only if you let me pay you back. In installments. I almost laughed at her stubbornness, but instead I nodded. Deal! Her relief was subtle but real. And that's how it began. Not charity, not pity, but a deal. A strange, fragile bridge between a millionaire, drowning in silence, and a mother fighting storms with bare hands. Neither of us knew where this bridge would lead, but I knew one thing: every step on it made me feel more alive than all the millions I had ever earned. Life has a strange way of shifting when you least expect it. Before Mishal, my days were predictable. Meetings, negotiations, dinners in expensive restaurants where people laughed without meaning it. But now, every evening, I found myself driving to that crumbling apartment, carrying small things that she would insist on calling a loan. She never once accepted anything as a gift. If I brought groceries, she would write down their cost in a small notebook. If I bought medicine for Aram, she would promise to return the money someday. Even when I had diapers delivered to her door, she opened the box with tears in her eyes and said, "One day, I'll pay this back." It both amused and humbled me. I was a man who could sign checks worth millions without blinking, yet here she was, treating every penny like it was gold. One afternoon, I arrived earlier than usual. As I walked down the narrow hallway toward her room, I heard raised voices. A man was standing at her door, shouting, "You're 2 months late, Mishal!" The man barked. He was heavy-set, his face red with anger. "If I don't get rent by tomorrow, you and that crying brat are out." Mishal stood in the doorway, her baby pressed against her shoulder, her eyes filled with quiet defiance. "Please, just a little more time." "I'll manage." "Manage?" The landlord sneered. "You think pity feeds buildings? No one wants tenants who can't pay. Tomorrow you're gone." I stepped forward, my voice sharp. "Is this how you talk to a mother holding her child?" The man turned, startled to see me. His eyes scanned my suit, my watch, my presence. Instantly he softened, his tone shifting. "Oh, sir, I didn't know." "You know now," I cut him off coldly. "How much does she owe you?" He stammered. 2 months, sir. Just small rent. Nothing for someone like you." I pulled out my wallet and paid the amount without hesitation, then looked him in the eye. "From now on, you'll treat her with respect. If I hear otherwise, you'll regret it." The man swallowed hard, nodded quickly, and scurried away. When I turned back, Mishal's eyes were blazing, not with gratitude, but anger. "You had no right," she said firmly. I blinked. You had no right to interfere." Her voice trembled. "This is my life, my struggle. You can't just come in and throw money to erase it." I was stunned. No one had ever spoken to me like that, not employees, not partners, not even rivals. But Mishal, she wasn't afraid. I wasn't trying to erase anything, I said softly. I just couldn't stand by and watch him threaten you. Her lips pressed tight. She turned away, rocking Aram gently. Silence filled the room, heavy and sharp. Finally, she whispered, "Do you know what people will say? That I have a rich man paying my bills. That I sold myself for money. Do you understand how cruel this world can be?" Her words cut deep. I had lived my whole life in a world where rumors were currency, but for her, every whisper could destroy her dignity. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Let them talk. I don't care." "But I care," she snapped, tears glistening in her eyes. "Because one day my son will hear those whispers. And I want him to grow up proud of me, not ashamed." In that moment, I realized something powerful. Mishal wasn't just fighting poverty. She was fighting for respect, for a name her son could carry without shame. I nodded slowly. "Then tell me how I can help without hurting your pride." She looked at me for a long time, her defenses still high. Finally, she said, "If you really want to help, don't fight my battles for me. Stand beside me, not in front of me." Her words etched themselves into my heart. Stand beside me, not in front of me. Days turned into weeks. My visits became routine, though neither of us admitted how much we looked forward to them. Sometimes I would bring books for Aram, though he was too young to understand them. Other times I would bring food, pretending it was extra from my office so she wouldn't argue. She would accept reluctantly, then write it down in her notebook. One evening, as I sat on the floor with Arham on my lap, Mishal watched us silently. The baby giggled, his tiny hands tugging at my tie. I couldn't remember the last time I laughed like that, unrestrained, uncalculated. "You're good with him," Mishal said softly. I glanced up at her. Maybe because he doesn't care about who I am, he just smiles. She looked away quickly, but not before I saw the faint warmth in her eyes. One night everything changed. Aram had been running a fever for 2 days. Mishal tried home remedies, wrapped him in warm blankets, whispered prayers over his tiny body. But when I arrived and saw the baby's pale face, panic surged through me. "He needs a doctor," I insisted. "We can't afford—" she began. "I said he needs a doctor." My voice was sharper than intended, fear breaking through. Her eyes widened at my tone, but she didn't argue further. Within minutes, I had them both in my car, speeding through the city to the best pediatric hospital. Doctors rushed Aram into emergency care. Mishal clutched my arm outside the ward, her face pale, her entire body trembling. "What if something happens?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "He's all I have." I placed my hand gently over hers. "Nothing will happen. He's strong, like his mother." She looked at me then, truly looked. For the first time, there was no barrier in her eyes, only raw vulnerability. Hours felt like days, but finally the doctor emerged with a reassuring smile. "He'll be fine. Just an infection. We've given him treatment. He'll recover in a few days." Relief washed over her like a storm breaking. She pressed her hands to her face, tears streaming freely. Without thinking, I pulled her into my arms. She didn't resist. For a brief, stolen moment, we stood there, two broken souls finding strength in each other. Later that night, as Mishal sat beside Aram's hospital bed, I watched her stroke his tiny hand, whispering lullabies. Something stirred in me that I hadn't felt in years, something I had almost forgotten existed. It wasn't pity. It wasn't responsibility, it was love, and it terrified me. The hospital nights blurred into each other. Mishal never left Arham's side, her devotion fierce and unyielding. I stayed too, though quietly, never wanting to intrude. Sometimes I'd find myself dozing on the waiting room chair, only to wake and see her still humming softly to her child, her eyes red but determined. Watching her, I realized something important. Love wasn't grand gestures, or diamonds, or the luxury my world worshipped. Love was Mishal, patient, relentless, unshakable, and I was falling for her. When Arham was discharged, I drove them back. Mishal was quieter than usual. She didn't thank me, didn't argue about expenses, she just looked out the window, lost in thought. At her apartment door, she finally turned to me. You've done too much, she said softly. I haven't done enough, I replied. She shook her head. You don't understand. People have already started talking. The neighbors. They think I've trapped some rich man. They say things about me, about Arham, and I can't stop them, her voice cracked. Do you know what it feels like to be judged every day? To have your dignity shredded by whispers? I clenched my fists. I wanted to storm into every apartment and silence them all. But Mishal was right. My presence had painted a target on her. Then let them talk about me, I said fiercely. I'll bear it. But I'll bear it too, she whispered. Her eyes glistened. And one day Arham will hear it. I can't let that happen. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Are you saying I should leave? I asked, my voice barely audible. She looked at me for a long time, pain etched across her face. Finally, she whispered, I'm saying, don't make me choose between your help and my son's pride, because I'll always choose him. Her words pierced me deeper than any rejection I had ever faced. For days, I didn't visit. I drowned myself in work, hoping numbers and meetings would distract me, but nothing worked. My penthouse felt colder than ever, the city lights emptier. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mishal's tired smile, heard Arham's tiny laugh. I was a man with everything and nothing. One evening, I found myself holding the phone, staring at her unsaved number. My pride screamed not to call, but my heart won. She answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. Hello? Mishal, I said quietly. I can't stay away. There was silence, then a shaky sigh. Adam, I took a deep breath. I know what people say. I know how hard it is for you. But I also know one thing, what I feel for you, it isn't pity. It isn't charity. It's love, her breath caught. I love you, Mishal, I said firmly. Not because you need me. Because I need you. You showed me life beyond money, beyond empty success. You made me feel human again. Tears slipped down my cheeks, though I hadn't cried in years. I don't care what the world says, I continued. I want to stand beside you. Beside Arham. If you'll let me. The line was silent for a long moment. Then softly, she whispered, Why me, Adam? You could have anyone. Women richer, prettier, easier. Why me? Because none of them are you, I said simply. It wasn't easy. When I began openly visiting her again, rumors exploded. Tabloids caught on, millionaire seen with poor mother. Headlines screamed, social media buzzed, investors whispered. My board members warned me, it's bad for image. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care about image. Mishal, however, struggled. The stares of neighbors, the gossip in the market, it cut her deeply. One evening, she broke down in front of me. I can't do this, Adam, she sobbed. I can't watch them point at Arham and say his mother sold herself for security. I cupped her face gently, wiping her tears. Then marry me, her eyes widened in shock. What? Marry me, I repeated, my voice steady. Not to silence them, not to protect image, but because I love you. Because I want to wake up every day seeing you and Arham in my life. Not as someone I visit, but as my family. She froze, trembling. Adam, this isn't a fairy tale. Our worlds. They don't match, I smiled faintly. Then I'll leave mine behind. Because the only world I want is the one where you and Arham exist. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She tried to speak, but words failed her. Instead, she simply leaned into me, her silence louder than any answer. The wedding was small, intimate. No grand ballroom, no media spectacle. Just a quiet ceremony in a modest hall with a handful of people who mattered. When Mishal walked in, holding Arham in her arms, dressed in the simplest outfit yet glowing with dignity, I knew I had made the only right decision of my life. As we exchanged vows, I whispered, You once said you'd pay me back someday. You already have, Mishal. You gave me a reason to live. She smiled through her tears. And you gave my son a father who chose him. Months later, as I sat in the garden of our new home, Arham toddling on the grass while Mishal laughed beside him, I realized how much had changed. I was still a millionaire. I still owned companies, cars, everything people envied. But none of it mattered. What mattered was this, my wife's smile, my son's laughter, the family I never thought I'd have. And it all began with a mistaken message in the middle of the night, a message that turned loneliness into love, a message that gave me a home.